Hey all you cats and chicks out there, welcome back to Control Players Unite. I'm your host, Dr. Red. Today, we will be reviewing all of the special condition cards in the current standard format, and here is a chart I will talk you through momentarily. A special condition is an in-game effect that impacts a Pokemon between and during turns, and always goes away if the Pokemon is retreated out of the active. There are 5 status conditions: Burn, Confusion, Paralysis, Poison, and Sleep. And now we'll go over these before getting into the cards on live. You can use an ability when any of these are affecting your active Pokemon. If you're burned, you can use an attack. If you're poisoned, you can use an attack. However, if your Pokemon is confused, you can use an attack, but you flip a coin, and if it's heads, the attack goes off. If it's tails, it does 30 damage. You can also not use an attack if you are paralyzed or asleep. Does it do damage between turns? Yes. Burn does 20 damage. As just said, Confusion will do 30 if you flip tails. No, it does not do damage between turns for paralysis or being asleep. It does 10 damage between turns if you're poisoned. You can hard retreat, that is to say, use energy to get out of the active if you are burned, confused, or poisoned, but not if you're paralyzed or asleep. And does the special condition stop via a coin flip between turns? If you are burned or asleep and you flip heads, the answer is yes. If you're confused, no, only if you retreat hard or soft out of the active. Paralysis, no, it's the end of your turn. And if you're poisoned, it stays as long as you're in the active, just like Confusion. So, with that being said, let's get into it. And just to clarify, everybody, we grouped these special conditions together because the numbers match up well for the 75 card limit to a deck list on this client. We also excluded paralysis on a coin flip because we would have too many cards to cover. We only kept cards that guarantee paralysis. Also, any Pokemon whose evolved types affect the same special condition as previous stages, those previous stages are excluded. Some cards will have an elaboration, others not. So let's begin. Amoonguss has Hypno Hammer. We're doing a sleep first, obviously. It has the ability to surprise spores, where if this Pokemon is discarded from your hand by the effect of an attack or ability from your opponent's Pokemon or an effect of your opponent's item or supporter cards, you discard your entire opponent's hand. With Hand Trimmer being a thing, I'm surprised this isn't in more control decks, but there you have it. Bellossom has Sleep Powder. Breloom has Spore Ball. Paras has Spore Ball. Parasect has Lethargy Spores. When you play this Pokemon from your hand to evolve one of your Pokemon during your turn, you may make both active Pokemon asleep and poisoned. This was used with Hisuian Electrode V, and I guess it still could be, as it's obviously still in format. But the preference is just to use Brute Bonnet right now because it's takes up less space because you need to have the wind-up arm tool to be able to attack with Hisuian Electrode V in that regard. So there you have it. Roselia has Soothing Scent. Toedscool has Spore. Venusaur has an ability, Loopy Lasso. Once during your turn, you may flip a coin. If heads, you may switch one of your opponent's bench Pokemon with their active. Then your active Pokemon is now asleep and poisoned. This is sometimes paired with the meme deck of Jinx EX. Otherwise, you might make it an option in a Venusaur EX deck, and it hasn't seen any competitive play to my knowledge. Ninetales has Hypnotic Gaze. There's the Jinx EX I just mentioned with Heart-Stopping Kiss. If your opponent's active Pokemon is asleep, it's now knocked out. Luvdisc has Water Pulse. Milotic has Mellow Wave. The other Milotic has Hypno Splash, has an ability Lifeboat, which basically functions as an echoing horn. You put a Pokemon from each player's discard pile onto their bench. Panpour has Water Pulse. Relicanth has Water Pulse. Slowbro has Tumbling Tackle, but it's used for Twilight Inspiration. You can use this attack only if your opponent has exactly 1 prize card remaining and you take 2 prizes. It was a staple in Zorobox decks before rotation. The other Slowbro has the Big Yawn. That's also a very nice name. Oh, and the Laid Back Tackle, nice name as well. Snom has Powder Snow. Swanna has Water Pulse. Swinub has Icy Wind. Chimecho has Dreaming Tone. During your opponent's next turn, if an energy card is attached to the defending Pokemon from your opponent's hand, that Pokemon will be asleep. Very interesting effect. Chimecho has Sleep Inducer. Switch in one of your opponent's bench Pokemon to the active. The new active Pokemon is asleep. Exeggutor has Hypnoblast. Hypno has Here for Hypnosis. This is another card paired with the Jinx EX meme card. When you play this Pokemon from your hand to evolve one of your Pokemon, during your turn. You may make your opponent's active Pokemon asleep. And this is good because it guarantees sleep and is not dependent on waiting a turn to come back to you for the Pokemon to still be asleep for Jinx, or any Pokemon for that matter. Also the chance that your opponent might retreat out of the active. Jigglypuff has Sing, Jirachi V has Hypno Strike, Misdreavus has Hypnoblast, Darkrai has Nightmare, the other Darkrai has Dark Slumber, Darkrai V has Dark Void, I see a theme here. Gengar has Nightmare. This also has the Night Gate ability where you can switch out your active with one of your benched Pokemon. This is becoming popular with some Charizard EX builds to account for block Snorlax and Pidgeot EX control. Malamar has Hypnotic Ray, and the Psychic Insight ability, which I don't think is ever used. You can look at the top card of your opponent's deck and your own deck as well. Sableye has Night Eyes. This is an interesting card here. I'd consider this a tempo or an aggro control card. Soothing Lullaby on Altaria, 110 damage. Your opponent's active Pokemon is asleep, but they have to flip 2 coins instead of 1. And if either of them is tails, the Pokemon is still asleep. So 2 heads, otherwise they stay asleep. That is a very interesting effect. Definitely worth checking out. Indeedee has Hypnoblast. Slackoth has Yawn. This is the wind-up arm tool, tool card that I referred to with Hisuian Electrode V. The Pokemon this card is attached to can attack even if it's asleep or paralyzed. This also applies to a Snorlax that puts itself to sleep. And then we're back to the beginning. So let's go to Confusion and Paralysis. Beedrill, Nadir Needle. If you have no cards in your hand, this attack does 120 more damage, and your opponent's active is now paralyzed and poisoned. Dustox. Excuse me. Nadir Powder. Your opponent's active Pokemon is now confused and poisoned. During Pokemon Checkup, put 8 damage counters on it instead of 1. That would pair well with Radiant Hisuian Sneasler and the new Stadium that puts an additional 2 damage counters on non-dark poison Pokemon. Gloom has Offensive Scent. Orbital has Brain Shake. Radiant Venusaur has Pollen Hazard. Your opponent's active Pokemon is now burned, confused, and poisoned, but no one ever uses it. They use it for Sunny Bloom, allowing you to draw cards until you have 4 after you attack. Venomoth. This is a card locking deck. Item lock more specifically. Your opponent's active Pokemon is now confused, and during your opponent's next turn, they can't play any item cards. It's an archetype in its own right, worth exploring. Good as a backup attacker, actually, I find, rather than a main attacker. But being a main attacker, it can work just as well for not allowing your opponent to switch out. But that remains to be seen how successful it will be in the future. Venusaur EX, Dangerous Toxwhip. Your opponent's active Pokemon is confused and poisoned. It can also heal 60 damage when it's in the active. Delphox V, Eerie Glow. Your opponent's active Pokemon is burned and confused. Salazzle. Tail Trickery, your opponent's active Pokemon is confused. Vulpix has Confuse Ray. Articuno has Wild Freeze. This is fantastic. I don't think it's worthy of being an archetype in its own right. It's more of a support attacker. This Pokemon does 50 damage to itself, and your opponent's active is now paralyzed. If you put the Emergency Jelly tool on this card, you can attack twice, then heal all the damage and do it all over again. Cryogonal, first freeze, unique effect. If you go second and it's your first turn, your opponent's active Pokemon is now paralyzed. Frostlass, Frosty Jail. If you play Candace from your hand during this turn, this attack does 90 more damage, and your opponent's active Pokemon is now paralyzed. That's Candace. She's also a trainer in her own right. Hisuian Basculegion. If any of your Pokemon were knocked out by damage by an attack from your opponent's Pokemon, this attack does 90 more, and your opponent's active is now confused. Lapras, Raging Freeze. If any of your Pokemon were knocked out by damage from an attack from your opponent's Pokemon, your opponent's active Pokemon is now paralyzed. And as you can tell, not many of these cards, ladies and gentlemen, are used in regular competitive decks. That's why we're breezing through them. Tentacular Panic on Tentacruel. It's another unique effect. Flip a coin till you get tails, but if the first flip is tails, your opponent's active Pokemon is confused. Bellybolt EX, Paralyzing Ball. Discard 2 Lightning Energy from this Pokemon to make your opponent's active paralyzed. Luxray V, everybody uses it for Fang Snipe, where you can discard a trainer card from your opponent's hand, but it also has Radiating Pulse. Discard 2 energy from this Pokemon, and your opponent's active is now paralyzed. Pachirisu, for the purposes excuse me, of Completion, we have Electricity Pouches, states this Pokemon can't be paralyzed. Tapu Koko EX, if any of your Pokemon were knocked out by damage from an attack during your opponent's last turn, your opponent's active Pokemon is now paralyzed. Azel, if your opponent's now confused. Claydol, Mind Bend, your opponent is now confused. The Kaboom Doll attack is why people use it. You put 8 damage counters on your opponent's Pokemon until 10 HP is remaining, and it also self-destructs. Dusclops has Fade to Black. Girafarig has Psybeam. Gothorita has Mind Bend. Hatterene VMAX has Gmax Smite, makes the opponent confused. Also has Witch's Domain ability, which stacks. Once during your turn, you move up to 2 damage counters from your Pokemon to your opponent's active. That's good for getting chip damage and can fix math pretty easily. Soothing Typhlosion, if you discard a Psychic Energy from your hand, you can make your opponent's active Pokemon burned and confused. Jinx has Alluring Dance, switch in one of your opponent's benched and it's now confused. Mimikyu has Perplex, which induces confusion. Miss Mages has Psybeam. Mr. Mime has Eerie Wave, and a really interesting other attack, Lookalike Show. Your opponent reveals their hand. You may use the effective supporter card you find there as the effect of this attack. Quite interesting. Rapska has Psybeam for confusion. Has also an interesting attack, Revival Blessing. Put a Pokemon from your discard pile onto your bench. It doesn't say, ladies and gentlemen, what stage. You could put a stage 2 for free right on your bench. Definitely worth considering. Reuniclus. This has been used in some Charizard EX decks coming out of Japan. Summoning Gate lets you look at the top 8 cards of your deck and put any number of Pokemon you find there onto your bench, including stage 2s. Don't need to evolve. Slowking EX has Profound Knowledge for 30 damage, and the opponent's Pokemon is now confused. This is a mid card. Really wish it had a little more HP, and Wise Headbutt just doesn't do quite enough damage, but I'm sure we could get it to work for consistency's sake if we tried hard enough with some of the new cards coming out. Swoobat has Attraction Wave, has an interesting effect. The opponent's active Pokemon is confused, but if they flip tails for an attack, you put 6 damage counters on it instead of 3. Unknown V has Shady Stamp, makes the Pokemon confused. Has an interesting attack as well, Victory Symbol. If you use this attack with only 1 prize card remaining, you win the game automatically. Tried it once, it was really fun. Xatu has Mind Bend. Bonsley has Blubbering. Interesting, also has a free retreat, and Blubbering is a free attack. Conkeldurr V has Dynamic Punch. Flip a coin if heads, the opponent's active Pokemon is confused. Poliwrath has Split Spiral Punch, inducing confusion. Arbok has an interesting attack, Panic Poison. Your opponent's active is now burned, confused, and poisoned. Drapion V-Star has Hazard Star, a V-Star power ability. During your turn, you may make your opponent's active Pokemon paralyzed and poisoned. Coughing has Suspicious Gas. Muck has Shrieking Poison, which induces confusion and poison. It also has an interesting ability, Sludge Street, which makes the retreat cost of your opponent's poison Pokemon 1 more, so you could use it for some retreat lock. Skuntank V has Shrieking Poison. Your opponent's active Pokemon is now confused and poisoned. We got Zubat with Supersonic, Magearna with Wind-Up Beam, Delcatty with Tail Trickery, Dunsparce with Dig Away Flash, makes your opponent paralyzed and it puts itself back into the deck. Suing Braviary with Mind Bend for confusion, although it's used for Eerie Cry, a free attack that puts 3 damage counters on your opponent's Pokemon with any damage counters on it. It's popular in spread decks, including Serena EX. Oinkologne has Confounding Cologne. The other Oinkologne has Perfume Press, inducing confusion. Spinda is a really fun 4-of quad deck. I got wrecked by one in the old Pokemon trading card game online client. Dizzying Spin does 10 damage to each of your opponent's Pokemon and makes their active confused. The other Spinda induces confusion on itself, and if this Pokemon is confused and damaged by an attack, flip a coin if heads, prevent the damage. This is here for completion. We have Wind Up Arm once again, and we're back to the beginning. And now, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to finish off with the Poison and Burn Pokemon. Once again, we have Beedrill, went over it. We have Carnivine, Festering Saliva. Your opponent's active is now burned and poisoned. I faced this in a meme grass deck. It was okay. Dustox once again. Gloom once again. Parasect once again. Do you see a theme here? Radiant Venusaur once again. Roserade with Poisonous Whip. The other Roserade with Poison Point ability. If this Pokemon's in the active and is damaged, the opponent's active is now poisoned. Scovillain has Hot Bite. Your opponent's active is now burned. Scovillain EX has the Chili Snapper Bind. Your opponent's active is now burned. It's also a fun little, I shouldn't call it a meme. It's had a lot of success. I shouldn't say a lot of success, but it had some success at City League tournaments, which are like 64-player tournaments at card shops in Japan. It has the potential to break away, but it just isn't quite powerful enough on its own. But it is a really interesting disruption archetype, so it's worth trying. Once again, Venusaur, we saw that one before. Venusaur EX, we saw that one. Armor Rouge has Flame Cannon, burning your opponent's active. The other Armor Rouge has Scorching Armor. If it's in the active and is damaged, the opponent's active is now burned. Centiskorch has Singe. Delphox V we saw already. Fuecoco has Super Singe. Heatran VMAX. Max Heat Burst. Your opponent's active is now burned. Also has the Magma Gain ability. Once during your turn, if you have a Stadium in play, you may heal 50 damage from this Pokemon. Incineroar EX, Blaze Blast does 240 damage and it burns, so your opponent's Pokemon, so it essentially does 260. Macargo has Lava Zone. Whenever your opponent's active moves to the bench, their new active is now burned. Ninetales EX has Heat Wave. Numel has Hot Magma. Camerupt has Super Singe. Pansear, or is it Pansear, has Searing Flame. Pyroar. During your Pokemon checkup, the Scorching Aurora ability puts 4 damage counters on your opponent's burned Pokemon instead of 2, and Fire Fang actually does the burning. The other Pyroar has Singe. Rapidash has Ring of Fire and also Retreat Lock. Another Rapidash has Singe, which induces burn. Salazzle has Super Singe. We saw this one before. Tentacruel we saw before has Poisonous Whip. Darkspun has Well-Baked Body. This Pokemon can't be burned and prevent all damage from this Pokemon by attacks from your opponent's fire Pokemon. Hisuian Typhlosion has the Supernatural Orb ability. Hisuian Typhlosion V has Singe, a free attack. Not many, if any, of these cards, ladies and gentlemen, have seen any competitive play, which tells you about the status of special conditions in the current format. Croagunk has Poison Sting. Toxicroak has Knuckle Claws. Toxicroak EX has not seen any play. It has Toxic Ripper, where you put 6 damage counters on your opponent's Pokemon instead of 1, and does 120 damage base. 1 dark and 2 colorless and 250 HP. Why play this when you can play Roaring Moon is the argument of the professionals. Glimmora, this is a really fun disruption card. No competitive play, a lot of play on the ladder, at least when it first came out. Shattering Crystal says when this Pokemon is knocked out, flip a coin. If heads, your opponent can't take any prizes. Poison Petals makes it so that you put 6 damage counters on your opponent's Pokemon instead of 1, and it's a stage 1 instead of a stage 2, and instead of 3 energy, it has only 1 energy, so definitely worth considering as a fun archetype in its own right for just basically trolling people on the ladder. Glimmora EX, Poison Gem, your opponent's active is now poisoned, and the Dustfield ability reduces their bench down to 3. Hisuian Growlithe has Singe for free. Hisuian Arcanine has Scorching Horn, which burns. Slitherwing has Burning Turbulence, which burns your opponent's Pokemon. It also has Stomp Off to discard a top card of your opponent's deck. We saw Arbok in the previous deck list. Ariados has Venomous Fang. Root Bonnet is used in a lot of decks, especially Ancient Box. Once during your turn, if this Pokemon has an Ancient Boost Energy Capsule, you may make both active Pokemon poisoned. Also, pretty much any deck where you want poison as an effect on yourself or your opponent to do more damage. This Root Bonnet is pretty much anywhere, like Cloth, for example. But, if you want to try doing a poison control deck, Root Bonnet is a fantastic way to start. Crowbite has Venomous Fang. It's critical bike attack. If you knock out a Pokemon with this attack, you take 2 more prizes. It's used in Serena EX decks sometimes. Dragalge has an interesting one, Rocket Poison. Your opponent's active Pokemon is now poisoned. If this Pokemon evolved from Skrelp during this turn, you put 8 damage counters instead of 1 on the opponent's Pokemon. We just saw Drapion V-Star. Garbodor has Venomous Hit, but it's known for Chuck. Discard any number of tool cards from your hand. It does 50 damage for each card you discarded in this way. You would pair this with the Snorlax with the Voraciousness ability to get back leftovers. You would want to discard the leftovers tool card and get it right back. Grafaiai has Spit Poison, self-explanatory. Colorful Graffiti is interesting. You may discard as many basic energy cards as you like from your hand. This attack does 40 damage for each type of basic you discard in this way. I have not seen this on the ladder even once, and I'm not going to try it. It doesn't seem very fun, at least not for how I like to play. Grafaiai EX has Numbing Saliva. Flip a coin. If heads, your opponent's active Pokemon is paralyzed. It also has Toxic Throw. Your opponent's active Pokemon is poisoned. Haunter has Super Poison Breath. Hisuian Overquill is an interesting card. It has a free attack, Tormenting Poison, wherein you put 5 damage counters on that Pokemon, your opponent's Pokemon, instead of 1. I used to really like this card when it first came out, but it just kind of wore off. Hisuian Sneasler V, your opponent's active Pokemon is now poisoned. Marini, Poison Sting. Muck, we saw this one last time. The other Muck has Poison Sacs. Your opponent's active Pokemon is now poisoned. Your poison Pokemon don't recover from that special condition when they evolve or devolve. Really interesting card. Never saw it in any play. Nidoking. This is a meme card from Pokemon 151. You could ignore all the energy if you have Nidoqueen in play, and also Venomous Impact poisons your opponent's Pokemon. Female Nidoran. Your opponent's active is now poisoned. Paldean Clodsire EX. Interesting ability. Toxic Wetland. Once during your turn, if a stadium is in play, you may make your opponent's active Pokemon poisoned. Sort of like a extra step with Brute Bonnet. Because Brute Bonnet's a basic. The baby Paldean Clodsire has Poison Ring. The other baby Paldean Clodsire, Splattering Poison. Rain Hisuian Sneasler, Poison Peak. This is the reason why it's used during Pokemon Checkup. Put 2 more damage counters on your opponent's poison Pokemon, and nobody pays attention to Poison Jab. Seviper has Spit Poison. Skuntank V has Shrieking Poison. Varoom has Poison Gas. This is the trainer I mentioned previously, Perilous Jungle. During Pokemon Checkup, put 2 more damage counters on each non-dark Pokemon. Atticus, you can use this card only if your opponent's active is poison. Think something like Brute Bonnet. Shuffle your hand to your deck and draw 7 cards. And we're back to the beginning with Beedrill. Thank you everybody for watching. Hope you get some new ideas for some decks now that you know it's out there. Please take care of yourselves, and God bless you.